Mark of the Thief by Jennifer Nielsen. Chapter 29. Crispus's home was on the outskirts of the city, on a gently sloping hill with vineyards as far as the eye could see. "They're not all ours," he explained, when he caught both Aurelia and I gaping at them. "There are many people in Rome far wealthier than us." "How many people?" Aurelia quipped. 3? Once we entered his home, I doubted it was even that many. The exterior wasn't so grand. On either side of the entrance were ordinary shops, selling food and wine produced here on this land. The inside, however, was anything but ordinary. The wide entry was tiled with precious jewels, similar to those I had once mined. For all I knew, my hands had pulled them from the earth. They created a colorful mosaic pattern of a griffin. I saw it and immediately thought of Kayla, wondering if she had survived the injury to her side. I missed her and wondered whether I'd ever see her again. Beside me, Aurelia seemed to sense what I was feeling. She took my hand and gave it a squeeze. I released it as quickly as she had taken mine. It still bothered me to realize only one of us was going to succeed in our bargain, and that it probably wasn't me. Looking up, large paintings hung on either side of the entry corridor. One was of Senator Valerius, and the second one, Crispus said, was of his grandfather, who had died only a few years earlier. "He was a great man," Crispus turned to me. "Did you ever know your grandfather?" "I never even knew my father," I said. "He died when I was very young." "Though he shouldn't have. Why didn't he get inside during the thunderstorm, like any reasonable person would?" It was Crispus's turn to go silent. "Oh," he finally said. "I'm sorry, Nick." I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I was very aware of Aurelia beside me, who had even less of a claim to family than I did. Crispus never bothered to ask her about her. I figured she preferred it that way. By then, we walked into a large atrium, where moonlight poured through an open roof. It reflected down on the surface of a small and shallow pool, with another mosaic beneath it, depicting the same griffin as I had seen at the entrance. Bright flowers grew around the pool, and their scent carried on the breeze. The full moon and large candles added enough light that I saw the dark orange paint on the walls, elaborate fresco paintings of nature and beautiful women, and illustrations of stories that I was sure every Roman over the age of 3 would understand. Impressive as they were, to me, they were only random pictures. "Is this really where you live?" I asked. "It's not another temple?" "It's home." Crispus pointed to rooms at the sides of the atrium. "These are our bedrooms. Behind them are rooms where my mother does her weaving, and where the work is assigned to our slaves." His eyes suddenly darted across to me, but I tried to ignore that. It was no surprise that his wealthy family would have slaves, but I still felt a pinch to hear it. I refused to think of myself that way anymore, and yet it was also painfully clear that I did not belong in Crispus's world either. To ease the tension, Aurelia pointed ahead to a room with a large desk I could see from here. "What's in there?" Again, he faced me to answer her question. "The tablinum, where my father works when he's home. When he comes, he will talk to you in there." Then for the first time, he really seemed to see Aurelia. "We have private baths here in the home. I can assign a woman to attend to you there." Aurelia shook her head. "I'll stay with Nick." "You should go to the baths," I said. She frowned at me, and I knew she had misunderstood. I wasn't implying that she smelled bad, or at least no worse than me. I only meant that I didn't expect any trouble from Senator Valerius. Just the opposite, in fact. Though I wasn't sure exactly what he wanted from me, I knew he would help with my problem. Valerius had no love for Radolf either. But Aurelia wouldn't budge. "I'll stay with Nick." Crispus sighed, took the bulky togas from us, and led us into his father's office. He gave us seats, then said he would call for someone to bring us more food, and left. Aurelia immediately leaned toward me. "I don't like it here. I think we should leave." "Why? Do you object to being somewhere safe? Somewhere I'm going to be fed for a second time in the same evening?" "You only think about food," she said. "And you only think about running," I replied. "All I'm asking for is enough time to hear what Valerius has to say. If we don't like it, then we leave. No problem." We fell silent when a servant entered from a second door behind the senator's desk. He set a tray on the desk filled with more bread and cheese and a soft white fruit that tasted as sweet as the strawberries had been. "It's a pear." Aurelia took a bite and then handed it to me. "Honestly, it's like your whole life has been lived in a cave." "It was," I answered with my mouth already full. I couldn't eat anything fast enough, and by the time the tray was empty, my stomach ached with satisfaction. But although I had to slouch in my chair and try not to move, I wasn't about to complain. If a second tray were brought in, I'd find a way to eat everything on it too. Aurelia turned to me and lowered her voice. "Valerius will ask about the bulla. You know that, right?" My fingers were already tracing the curve where it attached to the strap. "Yes." "What will you tell him?" "Nothing, until he tells me something about Livia. She's a lost slave girl. Valerius won't care about her." "But I do." I sat up straight and stared at Aurelia. "And if he wants to help me, then he needs to help me first." "I'm helping you, Nick. Maybe not for reasons you like, but I am helping you." Then Aurelia shrugged. "Wherever my family is, I wish they cared as much about finding me as you care about your sister." "Can I see your Crepundia?" I asked. She paused a moment before lifting it over her head and handing it to me. The miniatures were far more intricate than I had first realized. Someone had put a great deal of work into this, and unfortunately it was probably valued more than the daughter. I opened the small satchel in the center of the Crepundia and saw inside it poor man's gems. They were so close to the real thing that most people wouldn't know the difference. However, my eye was practiced from the mines. Sal wouldn't have considered these fakes worth our time. Realizing I knew the difference, Aurelia snatched the Crepundia from my grip. "I sold the originals a long time ago. One day I'll get them back again." "Why is it so important to find this family who already exposed you?" I asked. "Why do you think they'll take you back now?" Staring at the Crepundia, she said, "I think about them every day. Whether my mother wanted to keep me, and what might have gone wrong for my father to have rejected me so harshly. I hope it's a reason that he regrets now. Maybe there was something sad associated with my birth, and he couldn't deal with it then. Maybe our family was having hard times and he had no choice. If money is the only reason they'd accept you, then you shouldn't go back to them," I said. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she put the Crepundia back around her neck. "You don't understand." "That's right, I don't. You're my friend, Aurelia, not because of money or anything you can do for me, but because you're a good person, just as you are. Your family should feel the same way." I noticed her fidget with her fingers. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "I need to tell you something." But before she could, we both leapt to our feet at the fierce barking of two dogs. coming our way. Aurelia and I dashed out of the office as two black dogs raced in from the doorway behind the desk and went straight for us. Once in the atrium, Aurelia darted around as if to go to the rear of the home, but I ran forward. I turned long enough to see them still coming, and then tripped and fell into a small pool in the center of the atrium. The dogs came up upon me, and I raised a hand to protect myself from the worst of their attack. "Stop!" I shouted at them. To my surprise, both dogs immediately stopped their barking and only stared at me, just as the animals at the Venatio had done. So I got to my feet, slowly, and told the dogs, "Sit." They obeyed as quickly as I spoke the words. But that wasn't a fair test. They were probably well-trained dogs, which I'd expect in a household like this. They needed a more unusual command. Aurelia walked up to us cautiously, but her eyes were on me, not the dogs. "Nick, watch this." With a smile, I said, "Tell me if Aurelia thinks I'm the handsomest boy in all of Rome." Both dogs immediately started barking. Happy, playful barks. They were participating in a joke they couldn't possibly have understood. Unless they could. Aurelia wasn't laughing, but her eyes had grown wider. She only said my name again to get my attention, and then pointed. Still in the pool, I was standing directly within the beam of moonlight pouring in from overhead, and when I realized where she was pointing, to the bulla beneath my tunic, I saw why she was so alarmed. It was glowing, as brightly as if the bulla itself was a moon. I pulled off the bulla to see it better, and then its full glow became apparent. Beneath the moonlight, it nearly lit the room to a daytime light. Crispus ran into the room. "I'm sorry about—" "Oh." Aurelia walked forward until she stood in the pool with me. Staring into my eyes the entire time, she took the bulla from me and hung it back around my neck, on the outside of my tunic. "I know which of the gods supplies this bulla's power," she said. "No wonder it's given you so much trouble." Chapter 30. Forgetting about the dogs, Crispus walked forward, his attention fixed on the bulla. "We knew you must have it," he breathed. "Nothing else could have caused such damage in the amphitheater. I'll never forget that day." Nor would I, much as I had already tried to do it. Crispus reached out a hand toward the bulla, then paused and lowered it again. "How are you making it glow?" "It isn't Nick," Aurelia said. "The bulla is responding to the moonlight. Watch this." She stepped out of the pool and then motioned for me to come with her. Once I got back onto the tile floor, the glow began fading. After only a minute, its glow was no brighter than before, and I was fairly certain neither Aurelia or Crispus could see that soft glow anyway. "It's the power of the gods," Crispus whispered. "No, just one of them." Aurelia turned to me. "You can communicate with animals, and when the bulla is working, you are unnaturally strong." I knew about those, but the moonlight makes it obvious which god gives this bulla its power. "Diana," I whispered, "goddess of the hunt and of the moon." "She speaks with animals and has great strength," Crispus added. "And so now you have her powers?" "He can command a griffin, too," Aurelia said. "That one who was in the amphitheater." "It's not like that," I said. "She just listens to me." "Same thing," Aurelia said. "Maybe it was your griffin who pulled the chariot of Diana's twin brother, Apollo. But unlike her brother, Diana isn't known as the kindest of the gods." I already understood that. The bulla had shown me a great deal of its power, but none of its mercy. The door to the home opened. Crispus whispered to me, "That's my father, For now say nothing of this new discovery. Let him talk first. I nodded, and Senator Valerius came into the atrium. Crispus dipped his head toward his father, and Aurelia did the same. I wasn't sure what to do, but I figured I should probably show the same respect. Once I looked up again, Valerius eyed me suspiciously. "Why are you all wet?" "The dogs chased him into the pool," Crispus said. Valerius grunted as if I had some great fool for having fallen in the water, which I probably was. But I reminded myself that he had risked a lot to bring me here, so I had already impressed him somehow. I didn't need to do more. "What about your arm? It's wrapped, and badly done." Aurelia grimaced, but it wasn't her fault. I had rewrapped the wound myself after we escaped from the cistern. Whatever oil she had put on the cloth to heal the wound were long washed away. Aurelia spoke up for me, and her tone was cool. "There are people who will do a lot worse to Nick if they have the chance. Can we be sure you aren't one of them?" He didn't answer, and instead turned to me. "Let's talk in private." His eyes wandered from Crispus to Aurelia. "While you two are waiting, Crispus, get that girl something proper to wear. She doesn't talk like a servant. Let's not have her looking like one." Crispus bowed again, and with a backward look to Aurelia, I followed Valerius into his office. He asked me to sit, which I did, and then he took his chair behind the desk, clasped his hands, and stared at me. I felt uncomfortable beneath his gaze, but recalled Crispus's reminder that only slaves kept their heads down. I forced myself to look back at him and tried to appear calm. "Finally," he said, "I've been asking questions about you. You call yourself Nicholas Calva, a rather fine name considering you've come from the slave mines. You were known to be a hard worker and a brave miner, though not the most obedient." "I obeyed every order that wasn't stupid." He arched an eyebrow. "As a slave, you took it upon yourself to decide which orders were good and which were bad?" "You get to decide that. Why not me?" "I'm a senator." "You're a person, just as I am, and I want to live my life." Valerius leaned forward. "And is that your goal now? To live? I saw the way you fought for your life in the amphitheater. With that magic you threw out, you could have killed thousands of people." "But I didn't." "But you could have." He gestured toward the bulla. "What do you know about magic?" I hesitated at first, but finally decided that I had made an agreement with Felix, and Valerius was the only one who truly seemed interested in helping me keep it. So after a quick, nervous breath, I said, "I think the divine star is the reason I can do magic. Without it, this bulla would be useless to me, like it is to everyone else." "That's right. But the divine star is more than the reason you can do magic. It is the magic." "I don't feel any magic there. It prickles sometimes, but that's all." "I think you would feel it, except for the other magic that is pressing in on you." He nodded at the bulla still in my hand. "There is so much power in that object. I would guess you feel like you were tossed in the sea when you only asked for a cup of water." The comparison fit. The bulla's magic crashed into me in waves, not droplets, always so much more than I could absorb. And I always felt its weight, even when the bulla was cold. "This used to belong to Caesar," I said. "Until he abandoned it, and eventually Venus withdrew her powers from it as well. But Caesar chose a most interesting place to bury it." "In a cave near Lake Nemi," I said, "in the shadow of Diana's temple." "Where I first met you." Valerius frowned. "We heard Caesar's treasure had been discovered, and went to search for that bulla. though once I saw the mark on your back, I suspected the bulla had already been found. Why do you want the bulla, sir? Without magic, better I have it than the person who wishes to destroy Rome. Valerius stood and walked closer to me, then sat on the corner of his desk. Nick, you hold the first of 3 amulets. Each will make the power of the divine star stronger, and each will give you additional powers. This one, for example, allows you to talk to animals and gives you great strength. Because that's what Diana could do, I mumbled. She powers this amulet now. You may yet discover other powers, though if you lose the bulla, you will lose its powers too. I paused while the warning in my gut battled with my desire to know more. Finally, with a question in my tone, I said, There are 2 other amulets? The Malice of Mars, which gives its bearer victory in battle. And the 3rd amulet, the Jupiter Stone, which carries rewards so powerful that many men have given their lives hoping to obtain it. So far, none have succeeded. But it all starts with that amulet you wear. The Emperor wants it. He's afraid of you, Nick. He shouldn't be. He'd be a fool not to fear you. Rome hasn't seen magic like that in nearly 300 years. I shifted in my seat. But I've made a bargain with the Emperor. If I can deliver Radolf to him, stripped of his magic, then he will grant my freedom, and I'll be able to walk away from here forever. Radolf is no easy target. Valerius began pacing beside me. When he first came to Rome, Radolf was such a good fighter. Emperor Gallienus thought he would entertain the people well, so they made him a gladiator. It was a fatal mistake. Radolf's only fear in the arena was the lions, but he defeated them and won the hearts of the people. Eventually, he gained enough influence to have Gallienus murdered. He was the first of many emperors Radolf had removed from power. Does Emperor Tacitus know that Radolf has magic? He knows, but what can he do about it? Valerius fingered the purple edging of his toga. Radolf commands the entire military. He also controls the Praetorian Guard, which protects the Emperor's life. Or takes it. Then it's just a matter of time, I said. If Radolf wants the throne, it's his. That isn't what Radolf wants. A war is coming, Nick, and it is for the control of those 3 amulets. On one side is Radolf, who will use them to destroy the Empire, and then build it up again in his own image, with no senate and no government other than himself. He wishes to be worshipped like the gods. Nobody can stop him. His eyes drifted over to me, except for someone else with magic. Hearing those words sent shivers down my spine. I straightened my back, hoping to hold my courage together, or at least I pretended courage worked that way. I said, And so I am on the other side of this war? No. All I want is to fulfill my bargain with the Emperor and walk free. And I will help you to do that. But hiding you here is dangerous. So if you want to stay, then it's only fair that you help me too. I looked back at him steadily. You want me to find the other amulets? Valerius folded his arms and stared at me. I cannot allow Radolf to get them first. My hand stroked the bulla's face. By now I knew every ridge of its delicate carvings. Do you know where they are? I do, but the answer isn't good. Valerius began pacing again. The secret for creating a Jupiter stone is guarded by the praetors of Rome. They are dangerous, I finished, grateful for what Felix had already told me about them. He smiled. They could be, if they decide to follow Radolf. They guard enough secrets to collapse the world beneath the Emperor's feet. Surely the praetors are already loyal to the Empire. Not necessarily. They will obey the presiding magistrate of the Senate. Senator Horatio, I breathed. His name was sour on my tongue. Horatio has no loyalty to the Emperor. If he throws his public support behind Radolf, then the praetors will follow him. And the war, the praetor war, begins. Senator Horatio has the malice of Mars. Valerius shook his head, and only then could I breathe again. But he said, "Not yet. But because of his position in the Senate, Horatio is the keeper of the key that unlocks the malice. If Horatio knew where the malice is, I believe he would have already given the key to Radolf." I asked, "So how do I get the key from Horatio?" Because I'd sooner cozy up to a skunk, which, as I considered it, didn't seem all too different. Valerius wasn't ready to share that yet. He only said, "I can find a way for both of us to succeed. But while I work on that idea, you must work on your magic." I grinned with anticipation at that. It could be dangerous. You saw what happened in the amphitheater. Then I will help you learn. You must do this, Nick. To save the Senate, to save the Empire, and to save yourself.